Hi all. So the next stage with doing these wings are to make the full size ones. I think I'm going to be able to do them somewhere between 300 and 400 mil long. I just got to sort of experiment a bit, so I printed out some sections that are 200 mil long. That's the longest I can, or the tallest I can print on my 3D printer. Literally I set those to print, I think it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it finally finished when I started work at 8 o'clock the following day. So the plan is to put them all together in sections and then cover with a carbon fibre skin. On my favourite old eBay and ordered up a little kit for doing carbon fibre, and you might have seen my attempts last time at doing carbon fibre for an end can, which was an absolute disaster. So I've ordered one of these kits because then it's got nice fresh resin and the right amount of carbon and all that sort of thing, instead of trying to use some old stuff that's been knocking around for an indeterminate time in the garage. A kit that's enough, so it's 1 square metre, which would be far more than I need, 60 odd quid, so it's not too bad. It's not completely cosmetic, well it is partly, because like I said before, I'm a little bit concerned with the heat getting on the plastic on, you know, if we have a really hot summer again, so I'm kind of thinking that will insulate it and also give it a bit more strength across the joints. And I've also designed an end plate for it, which has about 5 mil of wing on there, and then it's 3 mil deep end plate. I think that's about as big as I can get away with. It's certainly as big as I can print. You can see on the print area there, it's like absolutely jammed in. And here it is, first one printing out. I think it's been running for about 20 minutes. We've got about an hour to go. Looks like an old vinyl LP, doesn't it, when you look at it from that angle? I'm showing my age again, aren't I? Well, no, I'm not showing my age. That's all cool and trendy again now, isn't it? And my record collection in the loft of hundreds of post-punk and indie stuff might actually be worth a few quid now. Anyway, I am demonstrating my ADHD, how to get totally distracted. There we go. I've got two of the 200 mil Mark 4 wings printed, and I've also got, that's not 100 mil, I've got a couple of 100 mil ones. I've got to go get those upstairs, and I've got the first end plate fitted, and I have a new toy. Hey, nice new drill. So the plan is to see how big a wing I can fit on there, 300 or 400 mil, and make sure the end plates fit okay. Kind of get it all mocked up effectively. Also add a couple of other bits and bobs on. I'll show you as I go along, and the reasonings for that. So that's them just chucked on. You see, I'm quite tight for clearance to the front tyre on full lock. Just got to see what happens when I put the end plate on, whether that would be wide of it. I get the chance to do my first hold, because that's just loosely put on there. You can see, unsurprisingly, a slight clearance issue there. There's plenty on here. I think all I need to do is just take probably 10 mil off of there. I don't think when I'm going along these are going to twist much. Basically what I've done is I've got 8 mil what they call studding, you know, so basically an 8 mil bar down the middle of this, and where these have been, oh, you can't see on those, but when you saw them being printed, you'll see they're printed kind of triangulated inside, so I'm fairly confident that they won't bend back as I'm driving. So I think what I'll do is I'll shoot upstairs and modify the print of this, and I may even, so this on the end here is about, so I've got a 200mm section, a 200mm. This is about 50mm. This was actually meant to be 100mm, but it ran out of filament when it was printing. So I'm just thinking what I might do is modify the end plate where I've got that few millimeters in there when I'm already doing this, and print the end plate out to have sort of 50 odd mil on there. So then it's just 3 pieces, not as it is at the moment 4. I just had a second thoughts on this actually. Instead of modifying all of this, I've got plenty of space to bring the mounting bracket forward, and on the rear one I can't quite put a bar across like this because the radiator's in the way. So if I actually brought this forward, I don't know, say 5 centimeters or so, that would give me the clearance on the wheel and might help it work a bit better because there'd be less interference going on, and it's got a little bit more clear air behind for the air to do its thing. I was reading all this aero stuff. It seems to be when you've got a lump like that, you actually have almost like a wall of air in front of it, where it's sort of pushing it out the way. It's all very complicated, this aero stuff, I've got to say. Having been watching lots of YouTube videos and reading up, I can see why these aerodynamicists in F1 are so sought after and why they're paid oodles of money, because it's bloody complicated. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to move those forward a bit. So unfortunately with these mounting, I only got 2 bolts right the way through and 1 here. I didn't want to secure this with just 2, so I could only move this forward about 15mm. Yeah, that's giving me about 4 centimeters of clearance, and it's clear lock to lock as well. So I think what I'll do is, as I said, as I redesign this end plate, just chopping off another few millimeters off of there. So that's the basic shape of the end plate before I kind of smooth the corners off. So I think what I can do is I'll knock 5, maybe 10mm off of there to bring that in and round that corner more. So that's the redesign. We've got much thicker there, so that's 65 instead of 5mm. Brought that back 5mm and brought that corner in a bit tighter, so fingers crossed that would do the job. And it's on. According to the printer, it's going to take 5 hours. I hope the printer's just being a bit pessimistic. I've done as much prep as I think I can now before these wings are printed. So the wings will bolt in here, in there, with one front bolt going into this tube that I've tapped. The idea of this being is, with these being L brackets, they can twist. So the hope of that is it will sort of help stop sort of twist like that going on, which is why that is there as well, to sort of kind of support it all. The time to start attaching these sections together, if you remember from the print, the slotted ones are the 8mm for holding it to the car, and then these I put in 3 6mm holes. The idea being these are for pins to align the sections. So basically I've just cut the head off some 6mm bolts and gluing them in with good old heat glue, and then that will line up. And that will line the sections up nicely. I'll clamp the whole lot together. Bit more prep on this to get it keyed ready for the carbon. So that's the plan. I'll get on and do that now, and I'll show you the results. So that's all the pieces bonded together. So now it's time for a bit of a clean up, and then I'm going to just skim it with a little bit of good old body filler type stuff, just so hopefully the sections won't show when this is covered in carbon. And that's it already for a bit of a rub down. I've never been very good at this. I get these lumps and bumps. I've never been very good at this plastic padding stuff. I've not done any for a long time, but you know, being the age I am, I grew up tuning and playing around with minis, and of course if you had a mini in the 80s, you basically needed a constant supply of plastic padding to fill the holes that appeared in it all the time. Anyway, there we are. So that needs a rub down. I won't be doing the rubbing down in the office, and I've got to wait for some 3D plastic to arrive to print up the other side. So having watched a couple of videos about carboning, hopefully I'll do a better job of this than I did of the exhaust. I don't know if those of you that watched that one, it was an absolute pig's ear. So what I need to do is I just cover this in a thin layer of resin and wait for it to go tacky, and then I kind of stick the carbon on and then just give it another thin layer just to soak the carbon with resin. But what's been sat in my garage for ages is my, hopefully, it's a kit of carbon and resin. So let's get that open. In the tube we should have a nice, check there's nothing else in there. Yeah, we should have a nice sheet of carbon there, sticking to each other. I managed to lose my little tripod. Tell me if you can see it. I can't. So a bit limited what I can do. I don't know what it is with carbon. It's been around for years, hasn't it? But there's still something a bit exciting about carbon. Anyway, so there's a nice sheet of carbon that I will be cutting to size. I'll just open up this other box first as well. It looks a fairly comprehensive little kit here. We've got some coarsish and some finish sandpaper, but I've already done that bit. A few brushes, a little pot. We've got some resin. What's in these? I need to read about that. It's so long since I've ordered this, I can't actually remember what's what with this. I better read the instructions, haven't I? I got this kit off of eBay. It seems pretty comprehensive. Actually, I might have done it off their website. Look, so I'm seeing that. Anyway, so that's who I've got it from. It's not a recommend. I don't know about these things. Just saying, that's who I got it from, and it seems quite comprehensive. So all these tend to be, rather than mixing by quantity, they tend to be a mix by weight. And this is 2 parts of this to 1 part of that. This stuff's ever so thick. Anyway, so I've got my... Oh, I didn't want to do that. I've got my trusty little scales here that I use for weighing out resin when I'm doing resin for transponders. So I'm not too sure the quantity, really. Ooh, look at that. Oh, God. That's somewhat unpleasant, isn't it? That's 25 grams. The carbon weighs 35 for each wing. So I plan to do, a bit I read before was that you use about the same amount of resin as carbon, but this is just the base layer. So I think this is just to make a tacky layer. So I'm going to guess at this being about half. So that's 35. So from my maths, this has to be, take it up to 47. Okay. Oh, I should put these on first, shouldn't I? Generally speaking, fiberglass and carbon fibre is horrible stuff if it gets like little splinters of it. It's pretty horrible. So give this stuff a really good stir. One of the things they always say is make sure you go around the edges and you wipe your stirrer, because the bit that's on the stirrer stays on there. It doesn't mix, so you need to make sure these are really well mixed up. I think going around the corners are the bits that are most likely to kind of lift, so that's the bit that I want to make sure is nice and tacky. Do the next one. And on the pot it says this takes about a quarter of an hour, well, a quarter of an hour working time it says you have, which means you have a quarter of an hour to kind of get the stuff out. Because I'm tight, I'm going to use every last drop. You have a quarter of an hour to kind of get it out, get it used. I think it will then start going tacky. Okay. So leave that for about 15 minutes. We've jumped forward about 30-40 minutes. One of the problems with this ADHD thing is waiting for stuff. It's like an absolute nightmare. I asked Jane to keep an eye on the time for me, to give this, tell me when 15 minutes was up. I thought at least 10 minutes had gone, so I asked her how long was it, and it was 3. Anyway, so I got bored with waiting. I've just been doing a different job on the car. But now I think it's certainly sticky. I don't know if you can see, it's sort of glooping up a bit. So I'm hoping that that's now in its sticky state, which is going to be sticky enough for what's on here is to be sticky enough to stick the carbon to. So I'm going to move the one out the way I'm not working on and have a go. Try and get rid of these long strands as well, because experience tells me they will always end up where I don't want them to be. I'm going to start on the bottom because I'd rather the joint be on the bottom than the top. It does feel like it's tacky enough. It is, yeah, hopefully you can see in there, that is kind of sticking on there. Use the brush to smooth it down. Try and just see if there's any loose. Figure if I come back from the sharp edge, keeping an eye on, I need to do this side first, don't I, to Make sure that doesn't wriggle away. Just need to make sure it's nicely stuck, really, isn't it? Don't want it air bubbles and stuff, because that's when it ends up in a pickle. Now I'm going to cut this scraggly edge off, because that's going to be showing. So all the trouble I have with this, I always then end up in a right old pickle with bits, and then it sticks to my gloves. Just imagine people watching these videos I do. You watch them to see how easy a job is to do. You see me make an absolute arse of it and think, I shan't bother trying to do that. Cut that a bit finer than I meant to for distance as well. We're just about okay. This is the underneath after all, so who's going to look under there? It's all these bits. Freaking thing. Get that one out of the way. Get rid of all this straggly crap before it leaps on the next one. Do the same with this one. Because the overlap bit then doesn't have any sticky, so that the bit that's actually overlapping isn't going to stick down until I put the top coat on. What I need to do is make sure that I don't just then fray all of that. Okay. So now, okay, so this is like the top resin stuff. I'm going to mix it. It's 2 to 1 again. This is, it's like toothpaste, this one. So what I'm going to do is put 50 of this in, and that would be 25 of the other. I think it's about right. Lollipop stick. There. 50.8. Close enough for me. And then this one needs to go to 75. There we are. 75, and we do lots of mixing. I'm not going to get it. Alright, that's well and truly mixed. Remember when I was a kid, one of my friends' dads was making a boat from scratch. I can remember watching him doing, obviously not carbon, fiberglassing. Huge great sheets of this. I don't know if he ever finished the boat. If you know anyone watching this knows what they're doing, can tell me if there's a way of doing the seam, the edge, without getting the straggly bits coming off Can you let me know? That'd be great. The comments, or even if you put it, it's best if you put it in the comments. Sometimes I get people commenting on the videos on Facebook, which is really nice, but it's better to do it in YouTube, because then other people watching the video on YouTube can see the comments and see other people's advice. Well, obviously when it's on Facebook, it soon sort of disappears as the conversations and other posts come up, but when it's on YouTube it will sort of stick with the video, as it were. Remember that same friend, next door neighbour, had a race car in the front garden. At the time, when I was probably about 8 or 9, I knew it wasn't a Formula 1 car because it didn't have wings and that, but I was so excited by this thing. Now when I look back on it with hindsight, I'm pretty certain it was a Formula Ford car. But me being, obviously I didn't know then I had autism, but I was probably described as a shy boy, a quiet boy. I never had the balls to speak to the neighbour and ask him, not even if I could go and sit in it or anything. Shame, really. I'd love to. Maybe that's why when I see any kids showing interest when they do these car shows and sporting bears, I always say they can sit in there. Obviously let their parents do the getting them in and out thing, but oh, it's covered. Just having a look where it glints a bit off the light. I'm just trying to use that as a way of checking there's no dry bits. I'm going to just double go along the edges because I suspect there'll be the bits that are most likely I've missed. So that's one down. That quantity seemed just about right, so we will go for same again. Give it a haircut. Here's a plan to do a rear wing for the car as well. I'm not sure quite how yet. I think doing it this way would make it a bit heavy. So I may well just 3D print some formers and kind of skin it in alley. That is yet again another thing I've never done before, any sort of alley. It's almost bodywork, I suppose. I'm not too sure the best way ahead with that one. I'll do a diffuser first, which I'll have the opportunity to follow me along with, making a cock-ups and messes of it, so you can learn from where I go wrong. Hopefully you can pick up a bit from where I go right as well, because I do feel now and again I get things more right than wrong. Let's go in here where I can just see, I don't know if it comes up, there's a little bit of excess resin there. So I'm just using a drier brush, so that either brushes it in or picks it up. And I think that's a mistake I've made before, that I just assume you can't put too much resin. But you can. It's just like paint, isn't it? And it runs and looks alright. I'm getting like a bit of a bubble along here. I didn't get it with the other one. I'm not sure why I got it here and why it won't go away. Right, I'm going to stop messing with it now. Sometimes the more you mess with something, the worse it gets. So, I'm going to call that a day there. And hope in the morning when I come and have a look at it, I got this beautiful carbon, not the utter mess that I had when I tried doing the end can. So we're a few days later and I've given these both, what have I done? I did a base layer, I did the carbon layer, and then 3 layers of resin. Take it outside in the light. It's a little bit lumpy bumpy. The sort of guidance, the blurb says about at this point to rub it down with really fine sandpaper, and the kit even came with some like polish. I'm not sure whether I will bother with that. I'm not looking for a show-winning thing here, but I think I'm quite pleased with that. It certainly looks better than it did in plain 3D plastic. Around this area could be better. For a first attempt at that sort of thing, it's not too bad, is it? And as we know before, they'll work. So it's just a case of bolting them on now, but surprise, surprise, I've got no engine in the car again at the moment, so I will bolt them in once I've got the engine back in, which hopefully is not going to be too long. But I'll finish this video off at this point. Hi, thanks for getting to the end of the video. If you're not already subscribed, please do so now. Just hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell button, and that way YouTube will tell you when there's any new videos. We've got some big plans ahead for the channel, including possibly a car build from scratch. So if you want to get involved with that, now's the time to subscribe. Cheers then, bye.